Hello everyone. Welcome to Module 3, Session 1, Introduction to Principles of Design. In this course, we'll dive into the core principles that make design not only look good but also communicate effectively. Design is a powerful language, and these principles are its grammar. By understanding them, you'll be able to create more impactful and meaningful work. We'll explore real world examples which will help you to apply these principles across different fields. Let's dive in. So, in your previous session, you have learned about elements of design, and I am pretty sure the session by Dr. Shahid was fruitful in terms of learning about elements of design and its detail. Just to recall, you learn about line, shape, form, space, texture, value, and color. So, for better understanding of principles of design, we have divided the segment into six categories. At first, we'll learn about what is principles of design, why principles of designs are important, and how it can benefit any designer. In session 2, we'll talk about balance. So, when we talk about balance, balance is the visual weight distribution across a composition creating stability. It can be symmetrical, which is evenly balanced, or asymmetrical, which is differently balanced but visually equal. In session 3, we'll talk about emphasis. Emphasis draws attention to a focal point, making certain element stands out. It guides the viewer eye to most important part of design. Next comes variety. Variety uses different elements and contrasts to add visual interest and to avoid monotony. It keeps a design engaging, dynamic by mixing color, shapes, or texture. In session 5, we'll learn about contrast. Contrast highlights differences between elements such as light versus dark or smooth versus rough. It enhances visual interest and helps elements stand apart. Finally, we'll conclude the session with repetition and rhythm. Repetition involves repeating elements like shapes, colors, or pattern to create unity. It builds consistency and helps reinforce the design's message. Whereas rhythm is the sense of movement created by repeating elements in a pattern or sequence. It gives flow to the design, leading viewer's eye in a specific direction. One important thing I would like to make you understand that you may encounter other principles on web. So don't be confused about which to address. Here in this session, we are including the ones which you will benefit while you explore the world of visual design. So, when we are talking about principles of design, before understanding that, I would like to talk briefly about communication because it's related to that. Communication is the process of sharing information, ideas, emotion, and meaning with other through various methods. So you might ask question how communication happens. So let's see that. As you can see in this picture here, there is a arrow which is showing there is exchange of information is happening between two person, right? So this is another thing which communication talks about. When you exchange your information to one communication happens. If I'm sitting in a meeting exchanging my thought with my colleagues, then the idea of communication happens. Not only that, if you're using your phone and you are texting and sending something to your friend, this is another way of communication through a medium, that is the phone. This is another way which communication happen, that is one to many. So I can take our example for that, where I am the source of information which I am trying to express through this medium of online platform. Now in this course there can be multiple students who have registered. Then through my course multiple people can access the information at a time. So that can be one to many. Another example can be for one to many are newspaper or informations which you get in airport, right? Or railway station through sound or visuals. The next way of communication is expression, which is very much evident in our human communication. So if anybody is happy, by looking at the face, you can easily identify that the person is happy. Same goes to if the person is angry. The next way of communication is gesture based. So in Indian context, we do namaste. And to address that, you fold your hand and you bow. That's a way of a gesture which any other person from India can understand and relate. And based on that, you try to communicate the way how Indians look or give respect to the people. Because of gestures and modern platform, now the idea of gestures is also adapted in digital platform. So if you see our smartphones, right, or tablets, the way how we communicate is purely on gesture. When you consider smart screens, right, you use your phone to left swipe or right swipe the information. You also use digital keyboards to text or write anything about any situation which you may encounter. So that's the way how communication has been evolving, especially in terms of gesture. Now, if we consider the digital world, like virtual world, where AR, VR, right, plays an important role, the gaming world is also utilizing gesture to be part of communicating with the device. So finally, communication allows people to connect, understand each other, influence behavior, share knowledge, and build relationship. So primarily, if we consider communication in our space, in our environment, most of the communication are happening through visual tools, visual mediums, which we have observed in our environment. So in the field of design, effective use of design elements plays an active role in achieving cohesive and aesthetically compelling compositions. Design elements such as line, shape, form, texture, value, and space are foundational components that use thoughtfully and help to guide the viewer's perception and engagement with a piece. By strategically applying these elements, designers can align their work with key design principles such as balance, contrast, emphasis, variety, rhythm, repetition, which serve as an underlying framework that directs the flow and impact of a design. So in this slide, you can clearly see there is a human a brain which talks about that the human brain processes images 60,000 times faster than text. And this is very, very important for us as a designer to understand how we process visual images and text. So if you have a situation where you are allowed to use both text and visuals, definitely you have to understand how you are balancing it such that we can process the information correctly. Another point is 90% of the information transmitted to the brain is visual. As I said, we communicate through visual more than text, right? and 90% of the information is primarily visual, then the idea of elements and principles act as a major role in terms of addressing such kind of things as a design output. So if you can see in these slides, design elements and principles, if done correctly, can also create good or effective communication. So let's see how good and effective communication can be addressed through elements and principles. Keep this in your mind. Without elements, there will be no principles. So using elements like line, shape, form, texture, right, color, space, value, definitely you can use the principles of design. Now let's see an example here. In this image, you can see clearly how the idea of the elements of designs are used to create the idea of the overall poster. So, and that idea is expressed using principles of design. So you can see lines in this composition here. You can see different thick lines, right? And apart from that, you can also sense shape. Like if you see the overall anatomy of this poster, the idea of shapes has been utilized. Texture has been utilized, torn texture, dotted textures. You can see the use of color has been utilized to express the overall composition. Now, when you see this overall composition, you can also sense a retro representation of it. And that's attained by using the texture, the color, the overall space which is addressed, and most importantly, the value has been utilized here. So you can sense the darkest color and the lightest color of that particular tone. Let's take another example. This is an abstract representation of how how a community is holding hands together, and it gives a sense of friendliness when you see this abstract represented icon. Now to address this, definitely you will start with the concept of lines. The lines are created to have a sense of two people joining hands in a happy manner. Now to add the idea of group, right? You can the overall representation is being addressed using a shape where it completes the overall anatomy. And there is a circle there, right? Dotted line is there. To address that, again, later part, the idea of dotted line is addressed. So using shape, line, the overall anatomy has been defined. And when you feel it, the overall idea of representing the concept is being projected. And not only it's just the shape now, it has a meaning. It has a meaning of community, togetherness, friendliness, and happiness. So you might ask, okay, so why we need principles of design? So principles of design hence helps the designers and artists to organize and arrange element within a piece, guiding the decisions about balance, contrast, emphasis, rhythm, and more. So these principles ensure that the design feels cohesive, directs the viewer attention, and communicates with the intended message clearly. So one thing you can also identify is when you design something, right, using principles of design, you tend to get well crafted output. Again, the idea of user friendly is always addressed when you consider principles of design. And next is the idea of inclusivity, which is very, very important while you design something. Hence, the elements and principles are the fundamental to creating visually compelling and meaningful works. They serve as a building block that guide artists, designers to communicate and to create effective ideas. The principles of design are especially essential in visual communication because They allow ideas to convey clearly and effectively. Uh, when we look into this, now let's recap what we have learned. We have learned about what are the various types of principles of design, right? And how principles of design is important, especially in visual communication, how we human being process the concept of image and text, right? And with that, we'll conclude this session and thank you for your time. I hope you have got some idea about the importance of principles of design, and we will also look into the concept of balance as the principles of design in the upcoming session. Goodbye.